Hello, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely fine. And your end?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah. I think maybe the microphone's not right on this phone or the speaker or something because whenever if you have it up to your ear regular, it doesn't really work particularly well. But if you put it on
Okay,
loudspeaker, it's kind of fine, that way.
there we are. You've had
Yeah.
a decent day?
Oh, God, it's lovely up here, yeah. Not that I've stepped outside the house. I've been
No.
sat indoors watching the sunshine from the inside looking out.
So what's your situation, Simon? Are you full-time into the property or are you doing other things?
Well, my situation is like yours, I suppose. I've done property education. I think you're going through education now.
Yes.
I done mine quite many years ago, I suppose, really. And I sort of got stuck in for a period, and I built a portfolio, and it sustains me in a modest way. I wouldn't describe myself as a rich man or anything, but it sustains me. It sustains me, and I'm quite careful about the way I spend money and the way I live and that. So overheads are low, but it allows me a level of freedom, if you like. So
Excellent.
that's where I'm at. But you're going through the education program now, or an education program now. Tell me about yourself, Mark.
Yeah, so well actually we went through the education program about 12 or 13 years ago,
Oh,
14
okay,
years ago.
okay, quite a while ago.
When
Yeah,
when it used to be Whitney UK, Russ Whitney.
that's right, Russ Whitney. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did the full package back then.
Uh huh.
And we built up a portfolio. We've got over 20 units ourselves.
Good man. Yeah. Well done.
But then when the recession hit, we actually had our fingers burnt. We got caught out with over 100 grand worth of credit cards that people wouldn't refinance us on the property we'd just finished.
Right.
And we had to, we lost our credit rating with it. We had to come to a deal with the credit card companies, and my credit score went down to probably zero. So
Right.
we just
Okay.
buried our head in the sands. I went back to work,
Yep.
and we've been doing that since.
Yeah.
Well, I've been getting a little bit fed up of doing that, and check out my credit score recently and find that it's now way up where it should be.
Yeah.
And so
Credit
we
scores are self-repairing if you just leave them and just carry on honouring any
Yeah,
money
well,
that
like
you
I
owe.
said,
They
we've been
self-repair.
paying the debt down gradually, so our debt ratio's coming down. We've never defaulted on any mortgages or any debt payments,
Good man.
and we've
Yeah.
actually got a really good credit score at the moment, well over 900 in fact. So,
Good man. As good as it gets.
it's
999, the perfect credit score, huh?
well, I think I'm up to 970, so I'm pretty good.
Good man. Good man. Love it.
um, but anyway, that said and done, we decided to go back to um, legacy and
Mhm.
just get really up to date with all the latest stuff.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
signed up for another platinum package,
Yep.
and we did the 3-day training about 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. Okay.
We
Yeah.
did about 5 weeks ago. We did the momentum
Yep.
2 weeks ago online,
Yep.
and then we did lease options last weekend.
Okay.
Um,
Very good. Yep.
and the Monday after the lease options, I managed to get agreement on a property.
Good man.
So I've there's going to be there isn't a grant, but there's an interest-free loan with
Yep.
it
Yep.
of up to about 25,000.
Yep. Yep.
And I just suddenly thought, well, when I read through the paperwork, it says it's for the person or the business that owns the property.
Yes.
And I don't know whether having the lease is classed as ownership. My name isn't on the title deed.
Okay. I can help you with that because I've been through that.
Fantastic.
Okay. I've done a fair few lease options in my time, and I've done lease options for other people, and I've helped them with it. On two occasions, I worked with two separate councils, and it was the same situation. What that is, that's central government money, and I forget what's the name? Is it Homes Authority, Homes Agency, HCA, Homes and Community Agency, HCA, Homes and Community Agency, is a central government quango that puts money up. It's taxpayer money, your money, my money, And what it's done is they put that out to all the councils around the country, and the councils have the job of spending it on urban regeneration specifically to get empty houses back into use. So you would have come across this via your urban regeneration team and via your empty homes officer. Is that about right?
Yeah, we knew the property had been empty for a couple of years, and we
Yeah.
were aware of grants available. So, not grants, some areas give grants, ours just give loans. So
Yes.
we just called them up. We told them, the guy said, I actually know the property, he knew the owner of the property, so he knew it had been empty.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, you'll be able to get a grant on that, or a loan on that.
Yes.
But as I was reading through the paperwork attached to it, that's when I spotted you have to own the property, or it's got to be in your name or your name of your business.
Yes.
So when I was just wondering, how do we do on this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I tell you now, this is it's the same setup. It's the same setup. I had it with two councils. So the basic premise from central government is this money's given to the local councils, and their mission statement is to get empty homes back into use and to get the money back in from the people that they lend it to. It's interest-free loans, and they have to get the money back in. And provided they get the money back in, then central government will give them more money next year. Okay, that's the basic mission statement. Now, provided that's achieved, I forget what it's called, Home and Community Agency (HCA). They pretty much leave the councils to their own devices. It can be administrated anyway, left, right, and centre, and different councils are going to do it different ways. But that's the basic mission statement behind it. Okay, so what they're likely to do then is they'll probably, well, I'll tell you the two setups I had. First council, Rosendale Council up in Lancashire. They the way they wanted to work it, they wanted to use their builders, or at least subcontracted builders, and they wanted to take control of it, and they wanted to manage it, and they wanted to put their tenant in, and that's the way they wanted to operate it. And provided I could work within that sort of boundary and sort of, within that sort of criteria, then once it was refurbished, up and running, they'll pay me some rent, and that's the way that one worked. And then the other one was with Durham Council, and they were a lot more flexible. You can use your own builder. Obviously we want to see proper quotes, and it needs to be a proper builder, and he needs to be properly insured. But you can use your own builder, and then you can use your own letting agent, and you can put your own tenant in, and we don't want to manage it, and we don't want to put a tenant in, but provided you can do all those things competently, and then you can pay back the loan at the end of it over whatever the period is. So two very different systems, but ultimately the same goal, and that's getting houses into use and people into homes. So that's the point of that.
You'd acquired these on a lease option, had you?
Yep, both of those houses come on 10-year lease options. Yes, they do.
So what did they have to say about the fact that your name wasn't on the title deed?
Right, now this is the way the councils work. They're pretty unoriginal in their thinkings. They're cookie cutter model, and they're used to just doing business the way the councils do business, right? Now then, when I was working with Durham Council on this, it was fairly straightforward. I had a good trading relationship with the empty homes officer, and I sort of explained the situation to her. I'm not the proprietor. On paper I'm not the owner, but I do have full legal control, power of attorney, management contracts, options contract, and she accepted it. So we went and put that in front of her superiors, who went and put it in front of their superiors. And what happened is we took their standard contract and we agreed some heads of terms, and they basically rewrote their contract one-off specifically for me. So I think any other landlords they would have been working with would have got a standard contract. But with me, I got a specific tailor-made one from their legal department. It took months and months and months and months and months to sort the bloody thing out, right? But we did get it sorted. Now, from memory, I can't remember the exact dates, but I do remember that they were trying to get the house refurb finished, the loan administered, somebody into it, and money started to come back. They wanted that by the 5th of April for the start of, or 6th of April for the start of a new financial year. Yeah, for the start of a new financial year. That was their deadline. Well, due to one thing and another, all on their side, that actually happened 14 months later. So working with the councils are an awful pain. They're very, very slow, very, very bureaucratic, but they were accommodating. That was Durham Council. Now the other council.
Phrases you used again were you had legal control of the property. What were the other things you used with them?
Well, with the lease option, your contract between you and the vendors.
Yeah.
You've got your options contract, which states the options price at the beginning of the contract, and it states the option period, and that's the contract that gets lodged to the land registry by your solicitor on a form called an RXS1. So when you get the title, pardon?
Okay, yeah, the RX1, yeah.
Yep. So when you get the new title deed back, it'll show the vendor, it'll show the mortgage lender, and it'll show you as a restriction, and it'll say something like, there can be no disposition of the property without a signed certificate from you. That's your legal protection. That means nobody can buy it, sell it, or alienate it without your permission. So that's your protection right now.
That's right, yeah.
Now, the management agreement is, these are all three very simple contracts that work together. The management agreement sets down your obligations to the vendor and their obligations to you. And it is typically that they're responsible for any structural problems, but that won't occur because you're going to check that out with a surveyor if you're not used to. You should know what you're looking at if you've got 20 houses. And then the minor ongoing repairs.
This management contract. This is between
you and the vendor.
We're talking about.
Pardon?
Yeah. The management contract. What are you referring to with that?
Oh, the management contract is 3 contracts for you to take legal control from the vendor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, one's a power of attorney.
Yeah.
And one's a management contract, yeah. And that states your obligations to you and the vendor. So I'm not talking about the council now, yeah.
So this is between me and the vendor now.
Yeah, between you and the vendor, and you would have covered this in your lease option course, no doubt.
Yeah, well, I spoke with the solicitor on Monday.
Yep.
MS Law.
Oh, MS Law, yeah.
I've said all they want from me is the head of terms.
Yes.
And the power of attorney. And they said they will sort the rest out. So I guess they produce the management contract. Do they? They send it all back for us to sign and look through.
Yeah. MS Law will I know MS Law. They're in Manchester, and they will structure over 3 contracts. Yeah, that's fairly standard stuff. Yeah. The management contract simply states your obligations to the vendor and the vendor's obligations to you. Typically, the vendor will be responsible for the structural parts of the building if anything should go wrong. You'll be responsible for the day-to-day maintenance and the day-to-day running costs and any taxes liable or any future taxes levied against it. So in the management agreement, you're allowed to charge a fee for that. So typically that is the gross income, the gross rent, less the mortgage, less the insurance, less any maintenance, and that is your monthly fee, what you charge. So that's no different to just a regular buy-to-let cash flow, And then the third contract for a lease option is the power of attorney. And the power of attorney gives you full legal decision-making over the property. So if you want to go ahead and apply for planning permission to turn one house into 2 flats, you can do it without asking the vendor's permission. If you want to section off a parcel of land out in the back garden and sell it on a different title deed, you can do it without the vendor's permission.
Okay, understood.
So options contract, management agreement, and power of attorney. Those are the 3 contracts. But go on. Yeah.
Yeah, so power of attorney, options contract, and management contract. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So the good thing about this is I spoke with the environmental health officer, the HMO guy.
Yep.
And he knew the property, knew the previous owner, knows his situation.
You mean you spoke to the empty homes officer?
Well, the other thing then is we've spoken to the. I think we have spoken to the empty homes officer.
Yes.
But they've also got another guy who's got a position created.
Yes.
For it's a scheme to not just get the empty homes filled, but to find suitable dwellings for the struggling element of society, ones who are going through hard times.
Yeah.
And because what I said to them is we could turn this into a 4 or 5 bed HMO.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that would be wonderful, but they said all we can give you is the people on our list, and some of them are basically dropouts in society, and you're so responsible for looking after the property and its upkeep.
Yeah, different councils will administer it different ways, but their basic mission statement is the same: lend the money out, get the houses into use, get the money back in. That's their mission.
Well, we've done a bit more research, and we found another guy now who is a similar thing. They will put people in, but they will manage them. We still have to get the money from them, but they will guarantee the money, and if the money doesn't turn up for a week or two, they will then chase them for us, but they will also put a rent guarantee in place, and they will also give us a paper bond, so that if that one tenant does any damage, it will be put right.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite good, and that's what we were looking for. So I think I can get 4 units in this, but they're going to be self-contained units, and they're really, really interested in that rather than a HMO.
Right.
I think I can get 4 flats in there.
Yeah.
So I'm meeting the guy tomorrow. So we're actually working with the council to produce what they want.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be willing to work with us rather than just turn it down flat. We'll just explain the situation, what we're doing, explain how we obtain the property, and go from there. I mean, if we can't get a loan from them, as it is a loan, we'll just have to seek a loan from somebody else. Because that's the only other problem I've got, because we're just starting out afresh. We've been putting all our wages into paying down debt, and we've just spent 24 grand on courses. We are absolutely skinned, so we're looking, we've got to find ourselves some angel funding or JV or whatever, that's our situation. So that's what we're one way or the other, we will find some income for it.
Yes, yeah. Okay, well, let me tell you, the other council I worked with was Rosendale Council up in Lancashire.
Yeah.
And that was the same situation. They'd not heard of a lease option before. Neither of these councils had heard of lease options before. So you have to sit down and you have to explain it. And Rosendale Council are very much used to their standard contracts. And they were a lot less cooperative when it came to tailor making a contract. And negotiations were really tough there. They were really tough. They had originally subcontracted the whole process out to a third-party company. The third-party company went belly up halfway through the process. The council then had to have an audit of that company. Then they brought it in-house and tried to do it themselves. Then I was about 12 months into this process with them. And they went, you got a lease option? Never heard of it. We can't do this with you. And I said, well, you've been stringing me along for 12 months. You've got to do this with me. So I really had to really sort of push them to get them to do this. There was one meeting with their head of legals in Rosendale Council. And I'm not naming names, but the woman has one of these big red heads from drinking too much, slightly ready, a couple of glasses of wine to relax every evening for about 40 years, one of them types. And she sits at this big table in this big heated office with all the windows open, her and her mate. And they sit there and they slide the contract across the table to me. And they said, well, the one you're signing is going to be a bit like this one. And I said, the contract you expect me to sign is a bit like this one. Are you for real? I says, I can hardly give you any kind of an approval until I've seen the proper draft of the contract. Then I'll read it, and if it's acceptable, I'll sign it. But if it's not, I won't. So ultimately, I got my own way with them. I find with the public sector, now I'm going to generalise, but I find with the public sector, if you pat them on the back, it works. If you make them feel guilty, it works. But you can't tell them off. The moment you tell them off, they dig their heels in and you get no results out of them at all, you know?
Yeah.
So you kind of got to treat them a little bit like children, people who work for the council or the civil service, you know, that way. Now then, that house then, they wanted to use their builders. Their builders weren't great at all.
Why did they want to use their own boys?
Pardon? That's the way they were working the system. And they've got their own leeway from Homes and Communities Agency. As long as they get the houses back into use, and as long as they get the money back in, they can pretty much do it whichever way they want. So they use their own builders, and the work standard wasn't great. And when I take the house back from them, I had to get a second contract put in place with them, which said that, look, I've paid for this, and this, and I want the house back with this, and this. They were already so over schedule. All they wanted to do was stick their tenant in, and I'm looking at it going, God's truth, I personally wouldn't put a tenant in to a house at that standard, you know. Considering these are authorities that have the authority to come down on rogue landlords, I say to myself, God, the councils are the worst landlords out there. The standards are so low. So low.
They use different standards for themselves.
Very different standards for themselves, yeah. Well, that one with Rosendale Council, likewise, they wanted something, they set a deadline of the 6th of April, whatever year it was. And that one was delivered 17 months late.
Oh, wow.
That's what you're up against. So, come here to me. The councils do grants. That's free money and you don't have to pay it back. And the councils do interest-free loans. And I don't know of anywhere else you'll get an interest-free loan, right? But if you look at how competitive personal loans are from banks, or how competitive even Money Supermarket, or even mortgages, if you look at how competitive lending is at the moment, and then factor in, in those 14 months for one house and 17 months for the other house, I still had to pay mortgages on those houses in that time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I had to pay council tax on those times, yeah. So when you factor...
You're losing a couple of £200 or £300 a month there.
Now you have it. And so when you factor that over 14 months or 17 months, quite frankly, an interest-bearing loan, I would have had the houses up and running in 2 to 3 months, tenanted, cash flowing, and quite frankly, an interest-bearing loan on either one of those houses would have been a lot cheaper than working with the councils. So that was my experience. Doesn't mean yours will necessarily be the same. You may have a far better experience than me, but that's what I went through.
But it's good to know that you did get through it.
I did get through it.
Then, as you say, it's better just to find another way.
Well, I'm just saying you probably want to explore all your options when it comes to doing it. It sounds very attractive on paper, interest-free loans. It sounds very, very attractive. But the reality of dealing with the public sector, dealing with councils, dealing with the civil service, because they haven't got an entrepreneur mindset, they haven't got a business mindset, they haven't got a self-employed mindset. You and I, we've got to get results, got to get it done. But they're going to get their paychecks at the end of the month anyway, whatever they do, even if they do nothing.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset.
Simon, thank you very, very much.
You're more than welcome, Mark. You're more than welcome. Any more questions, or if you need any help in the future, give me a shout.
Thank you very much. You take care.
All right. Good luck with your journey. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.